Hi, welcome back. Welcome to the first Seen and Heard of Hartford Stage's 21-22 season. I'm Melia Bensussen, just thrilled to welcome you to this new moment and to the return of Seen and Heard Live. We began these broadcasts, these webinars, I'm not sure what we call them these days, or this programming, we began it about 18 months ago with the beginning of the pandemic. So I'm thrilled that we're continuing now in this new vein. And I want to thank all of you. It is thanks to all of your support that we are able to raise the curtain on Hartford Stage. In this intervening time, we have been at Hartford Stage through a very intense journey of rediscovery, of thinking about mission, thinking about our role in this city, in this region, and in our work towards being a more equitable and socially just organization, being a civic leader. So one of the steps we're taking now is we're beginning our meetings with land acknowledgements. So if this is new to you, welcome to this celebration, acknowledgement. Celebration might be the wrong word, but really an acknowledgement of the lands we sit on and the history of this country. So I am now zooming in from Hartford, which is the land which is the occupied seized unceded territory of the Mohegan, Mashantucket, Pequot, Eastern Pequot, Golden Hill, Patuxet, and Shaugatuck peoples, who have stewarded the land, now known as Hartford, and the surrounding areas for generations. We also acknowledge the tribes with us in spirit and their ancestors, the Saquag, the Podunk, and the Tunishis. This is new to all of us, and we invite you on this journey towards learning more about the history of this region and our role in making the future a more just one. So thank you. Thank you for being here. I cannot tell you how thrilling it is to be back in rehearsal in person. We are rehearsing right now on the stage at our theater, your theater. We're wearing masks in rehearsals, except for when we do a run through and then we take off the masks. So this is an adventure for all of us. And this is an amazing group of people, an extraordinarily optimistic, talented, and committed group of artists who've gathered to reopen this theater with me. You'll meet a few of them tonight. So I'm really excited about sharing some of this and inviting you into the conversation. So as those of you who are regulars with Seen and Heard know that we start with a performance of sorts. Tonight you get a real performance. This is a little sneak peek into how we're utilizing music in this production of Our Wilderness. And so we're going to now hear performed a song sung by Katerina McCrimmon and Tanner Jones. So let's go to them, and then we'll come back for more conversation.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
Fitzgibbons, who used to sell ribbons and stood up all day on his feet,
grew very spoony on Madeline Mooney, who'd rather be dancing than eat.
Each evening she'd tag him to some dance hall, drag him, and when the band started to play,
she'd up like a silly and grab tired Willie, steer him on the floor, and she'd say, waltz me around again, Willie, around, around, around. The music is dreamy, it's peaches and creamy. Oh, don't let my feet touch the ground. I feel like a ship on an ocean of joy. I just want to holler out loud, ship ahoy! Oh, waltz me around again, Willie, around, around, around.
They're amazing. We're using period music throughout the production to give both, to sort of create a more theatrical environment and to really speak to or amplify the joy and optimism in this production. So, thank you to those extraordinary actors. I'm going to introduce you now to three amazing people, part of the team of Our Wilderness. So I don't even know how many of your credits, you guys, I can actually, get through without taking up the entire evening. So I'm going to welcome Antoinette LaVecchia. ¿Dónde estás, Antoinette? Who is playing the role of Essie Miller, the mother in our production. I'm also inviting on Michael Boatman, o te llamamos Miguel, que también habla español. So we'll invite Michael Boatman, who plays Nat Miller, the patriarch of this wonderful family. And Olivera, ¿estás? Where's our Olivera? Antoinette is in my office at Hartford Stage, which I love. So there you are. Welcome. It's so wonderful you're here. Michael, you need to turn on your camera, sir.
Oh, okay.
Oh. So these are people with major film and television credits as well as theater credits. So there you are. Michael, you have very dramatic lighting.
Very dramatic lighting. I live a very dramatic life. Okay, how's that? Can everybody hear me and see me?
It's wonderful. Welcome you both and introducing you to the Hartford Stage community. We're just so thrilled you're both here with us for Our Wilderness. Olivera will join soon and we'll talk about design for this production. Can I ask someone on this wonderful staff to put some of Michael and Antoinette's credits in the chat? So if people want to put questions in the chat about their amazing work. I have most recently seen Michael in The Good Fight. We're going to mention the TV first, because let's face it, that is part of what's kind of fun about all this. And Antoinette in Mad About You. So it's just, but really, they're extraordinary stage actors. So welcome to Hartford Stage. Have either of you worked at Hartford Stage before?
I have not, I don't think. But I know for me, Hartford Stage is one of those places where, particularly if you've worked on the East Coast as I have, it's sort of this may sound funny, but for actors, it's a bucket list stage. It's one of those theaters you go, well, I've worked at another one, for instance, the Old Globe that you know very well in San Diego, Melia. And as someone who loves the theater and loves working in the theater, there are certain theaters, the Guthrie, the Old Globe, Hartford Stage. It's one of those places. So it's very exciting for me to be here. And particularly to be here to do, this is my entrance into the world of Eugene O'Neill.
Yeah, that's my next question to you. So don't jump the gun, sir.
Oh, sorry.
Antoinette, querida.
Grazie. So I have worked in Hartford Stage a lot. I'm sorry, not at Hartford Stage, Hartford, Connecticut. Hartford Theater Works a lot. I've done so many plays there. The most was an original adaptation of a memoir. I Loved I Lost I Made Spaghetti in 2012. But I've been to, the last time I was here was 2012, so 9 years ago. But I'd done so many things, and Hartford Stage was a place that I wanted to work at. And the fact that it is now Melia, who is the artistic director, a woman, and Cynthia Ryder, a managing director and an artistic director, 2 women. I'm so honored to be in the reopening play of this incredible team. So let's talk about divine timing. I feel like I'm so grateful that I'm here for this project with you, Melia. So, and Michael as my husband too.
It's a real blessing. It's a real blessing for me. Let's talk about O'Neill. Have
Sorry,
either of you?
I don't know that woman that was just speaking. I just want you to know. never.
Well, they've been rehearsing in masks, so if you both do this,
Oh, that's,
if you both do
It's
this,
me.
then maybe you'll recognize each other.
Hey, Michael.
hi, honey.
They're not performing in masks. We're
That's right.
just rehearsing in masks,
Thank you.
being extra cautious.
Yeah.
What about O'Neill, you two? What about Wilderness? What about this play? Did you know this play before I called and begged? Did
I
you know
knew the
O'Neill's
play.
work?
I think the last time I'd actually seen a full production of Wilderness was probably when I was a young theater major in college. But I've seen. We were laughing today about how, you know, when you go through a professional career after a certain amount of time, you go on to acting classes and scene study. You know, there are certain scenes from this play that are very famous, certainly among
Iconic scenes.
that are iconic. Yeah. The dinner scene, obviously, and the scene with Belle and Richard. So I knew the play, but I hadn't seen it, you know, really recently. And I knew O'Neill's work the way many people who love the theater do as an audience member, but I'd never gotten a chance to ever really perform in any Eugene O'Neill. And so the opportunity obviously came up with this, and the fact that it's, you know, his only comedy was a little less intimidating for me. And I shouldn't have actually ever believed it was less intimidating, because I'm terrified now, because it is.
That's good.
It's just as difficult and challenging as if it were Long Day's Journey or Iceman Cometh. So, you know, I'm terrified, but holding it together.
But that has been an interesting part, hasn't it? Is that we discover the layers as we're working. How about you, Antoinette? What's your sense of O'Neill?
While we were rehearsing, I realized I've done another O'Neill.
Oh,
I did A Touch of the Poet with Daniel J. Travanti
Wow.
in the city some years ago. And I played, of course, right now I was trying to figure out who I played. It's the it's that wealthy woman who comes and gives like a 5-page monologue out of nowhere and then disappears in Act 1. But so I have done O'Neill. And then in grad school, I played Belle in what Ron Van Loo, one of the great acting teachers, said was one of the worst scenes he's ever seen. And my scene partner.
You're such an overachiever.
It was amazing. It was amazing. I was like, either you're the best or the worst. But I remember working on that scene, and I did see All Wilderness once, and I saw it at Lincoln Center. I don't know how many, maybe 15, 20 years ago.
Right.
What's amazing working on this play with you, Melia, and with all these actors is it is O'Neill's comedy, but it's still an epic piece, an enormous world. And I was saying to one of the actors today, I said, there's so many miniature plays. Like Lily and Sid are an opera of their own. They're like their own opera. Yeah. And there's that's a tragedy. And then the rest of us are in this other thing. And but within this play, there are so many relationships and layers of emotional agreements, as it were.
Right.
So I'm blown away by how wonderfully human this play is.
You really feel a playwright's celebration of human beings, of the range of behavior. Like sometimes we talk in rehearsal that it seems that there's contradictory moments, and you go, oh yeah, because they're actually people.
Right.
There and yeah, sorry, Michael, what were you gonna say?
No. It's easier to sort of rely on kind of, sort of, I don't want to say stereotypes, but, you think Eugene O'Neill and you think, tragedy, and you think, oh, the greatest, American playwright. And it all comes fraught with a real weight,
right.
even though this is obviously, this is the comedy that he wrote, it's still just as full and as complicated and complex, we're discovering, as if it were, one of the, most, harrowing dramas. And so, you know,
What I have
hopefully.
found fascinating about working with you guys on it so far, we're also, just so you all in the audience know, we're going through a couple of different drafts. We're treating it as a new play, since we have been able to excavate and find a variety of drafts. And so you can sort of see what he was thinking, what he cut, or what a different director or production may have chosen to omit, and what we're focusing on. I mean, I'm amazed by how orchestral it is, if that makes sense. I mean, it's kind of what
Yeah.
you guys are saying.
Yeah.
It's you read a lot of plays where it's two people, then two people, then two people. And here you have the music of a lot of different lives coming together in a home. And this family of, is it 7 who live together? It's 6 who live together, 7 who live together, and then Sid who visits. So we have 8, you know?
And Nora, the maid, probably lives there too.
That poor girl who just arrived from Ireland and I mean, there is the sense of an immigrant in the midst of it.
Yeah.
She's also the only one with an Irish accent. We're just saying that now. So I'm going to invite our extraordinary costume designer to join us, Olivera.
Olivera.
Is it okay to say Olivera's name like she's Italian? Olivera Gajic, do you forgive me if I give you an Italian sound?
Oh, it sounds exotic.
Darling, you're plenty exotic. You don't need any help from us. I wanted to include Olivera because she's a brilliant costume designer, and welcome to the conversation. You're also, I have to say, a graduate. You have an MFA from University of Connecticut. So
Yes.
this is a kind of homecoming to your adopted state, and you're teaching there this year, yeah?
Yes, a
And-
long time graduate. Yeah.
Darling,
And,
we're all a long time everything, you know?
Yes, and I have to say, as a students, actually, they brought us to his house and his estate in Connecticut. And while designing the show, I had all these colors in mind: the sky, the sea, the faded houses, like the wood.
And we'll see a little bit of that coming up.
And I, Melia set the tone, and I went with what I knew. But I was lucky to be able to go there several times.
That's great.
And enjoy.
I mean, one thing maybe the three of you could touch on, and then we'll look at Olivera's sketches. Right, we've talked about sort of the iconic nature of O'Neill. We've hinted at, and it tends to be very true to the writer's origins, as opposed to other playwrights, Shakespeare et al., that we are very comfortable juxtaposing different cultures and vocabularies on. And yet, I think O'Neill has sort of stayed more or less fixed in its own origins. And part of what we're doing, which I just love, is kind of celebrating how the play is strong enough, interesting enough, that it can get past that and become a story of you two being the parents of this family. And so part of what we did, Olivera, maybe we should go to some of your research. And I know you have to leave us at 7:30, so I'm conscious of time. But we've been talking about what is the contemporary version of these people versus a play set in 1906, right? So Olivera, do you want to talk about where you went with that idea?
Yes, well, I'm grateful that Melia had that question of who are these people today, and just made my design more exciting. Like, it was exciting for me to design from that standpoint, and much more challenging. So I had to find these characters both in period and find their equivalents in contemporary world, so we can start off with the people that we know from today's day, and then slowly go into the character of the play. So maybe if we show sketches.
I was going to say, so I think Scott, thank you. All right, so Olivera, there's a great story to these two photos.
Yes. So on the left is my friend Sarah, the lady in the blue shoes, and her family. And on the right, it's just New England family enjoying their outside time. And I just felt the family on the left is, beside being so contemporary, it's very much American family, including all different nationalities, all different colors, and yet unified with the color of the New England. I don't know how to describe that color. It's like blues, beiges, ginghams, plaids. It's specific way of dressing that it's very stuck with me coming to this part of the world as a foreigner. There is like color palette that I attach to the beach of New England. So I think these two photographs have that kind of stylized the way. And so we will start in pretty much contemporary world. I think this photograph is too staged in the sense of color, but I like people that are so natural in it.
Right.
And also people in period clothing are so comfortable being dressed in wool jackets in the midst of summer. So wool jackets and shirts. So
Michael, don't worry. We're not going to put you in a wool jacket. I don't think. Are we putting him in a wool jacket?
No, seersuckers, and because it was impolite to be without jacket in front of ladies back then. So it was like etiquette.
So as you go forward, can we go to the next image?
Yes.
Something we talked about, and I'm waiting to see what our next slide is. So here we are again in period, but let's go to the next one. Is that all right? So here we go. So Olivera, do you want to talk about this image?
Well, this image, it's the challenges that we wanted fluidly to go into the period character. And actually this contemporary people have essence of the character that they will become.
Right.
So, and also I put Jim's set designer's painting in the background just because it perfectly reminds me of environment.
So that's going to be the backdrop. When you come see the production, you'll see this. Thank you. You'll see this behind the set, but these colors and the feel of a true New London summer will be there. So go ahead.
So I choose fabrics and colors that we use today, but also can translate into period, like her gingham shirt. It's very contemporary, but I will, by adding details, transfer her very quickly into period look. Same with the father, he will have seersucker pants and shirt, and just by adding elements, same hat, just adding some period elements will immediately bring us to different stories.
So I love this, right? Because I think we fall into a trap with these plays. And Michael, it's a little of what you were saying of how O'Neill becomes almost what I call a bit the Mona Lisa syndrome. It becomes the play itself gets put behind so many panes of glass and honored and respected at a distance without it really being something we feel we can access or feel in. And starting our characters in contemporary clothing and then moving them into period clothing, I hope will help you, the audience, see that you can listen to them and be with them as though it were a new play and not feel, oh, that's how it was back then, and I have no connection to it, if that makes sense.
I did a play about a few years ago about the life of Scott Joplin.
Yeah.
And one of the reviews said something that, apart from how wonderful I was.
Yes, of course.
No, but one of the things that stuck with me was they said that, it was, the period and all of this stuff, that it felt like a museum piece.
Yeah.
It felt like something you walk into a museum and see actors kind of, or really mannequins. And I definitely was afraid that, doing a play set in 1908, and every other production of this I'd seen did feature, heavy wools and heavy dark drab.
Right, and this is about really feeling like we're part of this family. And O'Neill's genius at capturing both the strengths and the challenges of living with other people.
Yeah, for sure. And Olivera's
wonderful.
definitely put that to rest.
So I think the modern, the beginning in the modern, as well as the live music, will really help with this. Go ahead, Olivera. Do you want to take us
Well, it's
forward?
part of also costume history. I'm not inventing anything new. The gingham pattern was used centuries, especially
We
in this
still
part
have
of the
it.
realm. And we
I'm-
still use it, and seersucker. So like linens. So we are trying to, I choose
Okay,
clothing
this
that is
is-
more kind of lived in quality. Like even if it is nice suit, it will have wrinkle
Right,
because it is
because
natural fiber and they
and
they
they're
can,
clothes, not costumes. If
yes,
you out
that
there,
will
we
be,
want you to feel like these are real people in real clothes and they're
yeah,
speaking to us. All right,
that's the
Olivera, tell
goal.
us about these two photos because these are amazing.
So on the, well, on your left, it's photo with the bicycle are gentlemen from Harlem today. They're like just nicely dressed gentlemen dandies that have feeling of the period. On the right, it's real period clothing. And on the first side, when you look both, you don't know that left one is actually
Right.
contemporary. Just the way how these dandies style themselves. Some of them are wearing jeans, but they're also wearing very classic men's
Right.
elements like shirts with white collars and cuffs, nice jackets, vests, fedoras, Panama hats. So it's kind of timeless fashion, basically. And that's my goal. Yeah, it will be period, but in some way I want to make it timeless. So it is a big task, and
And
hopefully I succeed. But I think those gentlemen on
I've
the
no
left
doubt.
succeeded quite well.
Yeah, you really couldn't tell which year either of those photos are taken, and they do feel like they're right, that they're in the same period as opposed to years apart. Go forward. Let's go forward and see what else. All right. So it becomes more period as we go deeper into the heart of the play, and you see on the side, Antoinette mentioned the opera that is the relationship. Oh, that's Macomber, isn't it?
Yes.
That's not Sid.
Yeah.
That's Macomber and
that's
Lily.
Macomber.
Okay.
Well, Macomber, it will be really the most period looking character. And just there is like a few people that will really, I will attempt to make them stuffy, like really not
And-
natural, just to kind of support the character.
Right.
But the family will be quite relaxed and breaking all Edwardian rules of dressing by being in shirt sleeves and unbuttoned
There's
neck
a
buttons.
storyline you'll when you see the play, you'll see of our young protagonist, the child of Antoinette and Michael. Right, Michael, how would you describe Richard? He's a young Eugene O'Neill, we know that, but
He is. Can you hear me? Do I have my mic on?
we hear you.
Well, yeah, he's the avatar, if you will, of Eugene O'Neill, and Our Wilderness is understood by people who love this play to be, sort of the anti Long Day's Journey into Night. It's Eugene O'Neill's youth and childhood as Eugene O'Neill would have wanted it, would have
His
wished.
Wishing out loud play, as we've been
Right.
calling it,
As
his
compared
dream
to
play.
what it really was. And so Richard, who is, essentially Eugene O'Neill as a boy, is, fiery and passionate, and he's all about, socialism and sort of bringing down the system, much like lots of kids his age today.
Yep.
I mean, you think about what's happening in the country. Richard is right. He could be out there in a Black Lives Matter march, or
Right. He's quoting as
for the environmental causes or anything.
right.
But
You
that's
say at one point he sounds like Emma Goldman, which is a very
activist of the day.
right.
And so he obviously is sort of navigating the worlds of, his ideals, what kind of world we should be based on, sort of philosophies that aren't particularly associated with America at this time.
Right. He's incredibly, and part of why I'm sort of celebrating Olivera's take on Macomber is he's our more conservative voice. So we've got Richard reading Oscar Wilde and Shaw and Ibsen and Carlyle's French Revolution and Swinburne, and he's quoting these very anarchist, individualist, socialist ideas, and Macomber, our most conservative voice. I'm not saying he's wearing a MAGA hat, and he's not. We're not doing contemporary. But there is a bit of the conservative voice there, and the costume helps there.
Well, you get the feeling for sure that Macomber represents the past,
Right.
more so than any other character. I think
right.
play, and that Richard really is the future, certainly the
Right.
future that O'Neill might have longed for at that time.
That's great. Can we see, are there other slides before we have to let go of Olivera, and then we
I
can...
think just one more. Yeah.
Oh, look at you two. Look how cute you both are. I love how Olivera puts your photos on.
And
I love it.
it's so great.
Like, that is so, like, he's always like, well, he's got his shoulders up.
Very expressive.
Yeah.
I love
It's lovely.
Yeah, for me, I just want to tell to listeners that I love putting actors' faces, even though sometimes it's not very organic way. So I know who I'm dressing, and it's easier for me to imagine. So, and it's entertaining for them usually. So
Yeah.
Yes.
that's why.
It's very entertaining, and I've never seen anyone do that before.
But it helped me.
Yes, it is, and it gives me as an actor a feeling for what you're really after too.
Yeah.
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 know,
Well,
right.
I can design only when I know the story, and also
Mhm.
when I know the actor. I always wait to see who is the actor.
Yeah.
Or
I think this is part of
Yeah.
your strength as a designer, Olivera, is you don't work in the abstract. You really build with people and
Yeah.
and in the world, which is just a real gift. So we're lucky you're here at Hartford Stage.
oh, thank you.
I think we can stop screen sharing and
Yes.
turn folks here. Oh, Olivera, I know you
Yeah.
I know you have to go, but
Yeah.
thank you
I
for
thank
joining
you all,
us.
and I
Bye,
hope you enjoy this smooth transition from the contemporary to period of
Absolutely.
telling
Thank
the
you so
story.
much.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So, what comes to mind in terms of what it's been like after this period of isolation that we've all been through? How does it, is it, we've talked at some points that it's kind of scary to be back, right? This feeling of being back in a room. What's it been like for both of you?
Shall I go? Shall I
Yes,
go?
you go.
Let me speak for a
They-
moment here. I will say that the first rehearsal was so emotional because it was such a joy to be in a room again with other actors and creative director, the entire design team on Zoom. You know, it was bizarre and wonderful. And I must say that it felt very heart opening, actually. The reality of the pandemic situation is wearing masks during rehearsal. That's the reality as actors, where we speak behind a mask. And we can't, you know, we were joking about it, but not being able to see our fellow actors on stage, we're not able to see the entire face. That's bizarre. It's
Yeah.
bizarre
Yeah.
not to see those subtle shifts in someone's, I mean, it's just the eyes, which is great, don't get me wrong, but there's like subtle shifts here,
Right.
you know. That's the time where the reality of our lives, our pandemic lives, becomes very present. But otherwise, it has been a tremendous joy to be working. And what I love, Melia, that I wanted to say while listening to Olivera and talking about the contemporary into the period, is that even today at rehearsal, just addressing this quick scene between two women in the play, myself and the actress playing Lily, that we are direct, we are two women speaking directly to each other. And interestingly enough, running lines with my husband, he said, honey, look at your lines. Eugene O'Neill has written them in a direct way. You are paraphrasing in a way that is indirect, but he writes it. This woman is very direct. And I
Very
said,
direct. Yeah.
that's amazing. It's amazing he wrote these women writing in a very indirect language, very clear. There's no kind of like wishy-washy. It's very direct and to the point. And I was like, wow, what an interesting observation from someone running lines with me. I
It's
found
great
it
that he's picking
fascinating.
up from the rhythm of the language, right?
Yes.
And I think part of what we've been doing is stripping away some of the, forgive the phrase, friends, but the period frou-frou. I mean, it wasn't frou-frou at the time,
Yeah.
but there are certain phrases. So for example, bula bula, right? So one character says to another, how you doing, bula bula? And there's moments like that you feel take you out of the play and make you feel, oh, it's long ago and far away. And I feel that directness is being manifest in all aspects, in how we're trimming the text,
Yes.
in how, you know, how we're staging it. It's a very open stage. You'll see when you come to the theater, and it's really about celebrating actors and text.
Yeah. You know, I can say that for me, you know, when you and I spoke the very first time, Melia, about this play and your vision for the play, the thing that I recall thinking at the time, well, okay, our wilderness, okay, get it. Eugene O'Neill, get it. But wow, why now? Why, you know, and of course there's always, for some actors, there's always, why me? I mean, what is it about? But we talked a little bit about your idea about reflecting a multicultural universe that we all now inhabit, that the characters, you know, when this play was written, did not, even though they did, but they, as far as they knew, they did.
Well, and they were, you know, they were the new immigrants.
Right.
They were the Irish that weren't respected. It's kind of interesting, right? Because now we assume they're the entitled people, but in fact, O'Neill's family, right? I mean, the trauma in part in that family is his father's immigrant, is the poverty that O'Neill's father grew up with as an immigrant with, he was born in the States, but his mother, right, was from Ireland. So
well, the irony that he sets the play on the 4th of July,
right,
that American of holidays, and that, you know, and that my character is a booster for, come on, it's the 4th, let's do, what are we gonna go? Where, you know, and what I remember talking to you about that I loved, and what really hooked my interest about your idea was that you kept saying, and you mentioned the word here a minute ago, you kept using the word optimistic and optimism. And certainly at that point, you know, just coming out of that part of the shutdown or the pandemic or wherever we are now. Yeah, it's a word I hadn't heard. When you said optimism, when you talked to me during our first conversation, did she say optimistic? What is there to be? Well, okay, let's think about that. You know, I mean, but that's where I felt we were at that point as a society, certainly as a country, just sort of desperate for optimism, desperate for good news, desperate for a better vision of ourselves than what we were sort of.
That's right. And if we can envision it, maybe we become it, right? I mean, there's this wishing out loud thing that O'Neill's doing of, if only my family were this. Antoinette, what were you going to say?
Yeah.
Well, I absolutely agree with that about envisioning, and then things will follow in that pattern. I've always felt that theater is a place where the energy is so potent. You know, even us gathering this group of actors now. When you originally cast it, Trump was still in office. Pardon me. I just want to say, politically, our country has changed. Since you originally cast it to now, our country has changed politically. I mean, obviously, I don't want to get into politics right now, but we have a different president. We have all been vaccinated. There's all this change. And also there have been, as Michael was describing, the country has been in discussions about reparations, about, you introduced us tonight with the
land acknowledgement, right?
land
Which is new
acknowledgement,
to us.
which
We've
is new
never,
to Hartford Stage. And also the fact that we're gathering and we're sitting there in a room filled with a cast from so many different backgrounds, so many different cultures. And we're gathering. And what I noticed though, is that every single person in the room had this enormous heart. So the fact that this positive, I know, Michael, you just said like, you know, optimism, but like we're in a room and everyone is so positive, forgive me for saying that, but positive, open-hearted, and we're all gathering to address this, not dated, but a play from written
from
in
another
19
moment in
from
our
another moment in
history.
our time, and we are
Yeah.
addressing it, and you are presenting it to the Hartford Stage audience as a new play.
Yeah.
I think that's incredibly optimistic, and I
Well-
think how wonderful that you, Melia, as the first female artistic director of Hartford Stage, we're bringing this play in and to be seen in a new way, to be worked on in a new way. I'm beside myself with like excitement for presenting this and rehearsing it more.
Yeah, yeah. Our joke in
I mean,
rehearsal is Michael keeps saying, well, we're good, we open tomorrow, but we're very grateful we're not opening tomorrow. I have a favorite O'Neill quote. You two have heard me say this, so forgive me. But O'Neill said at one point, he was being interviewed and he said, everyone thinks I'm a pessimist, but quite the contrary. In spite of all my scars, I'm just plain tickled at life. And tickled, he's tickled at life.
Well, even in his darkest moments, when there is that strange vein of sort of a sardonic, bitter humor. I mean, yeah, I mean, even you think of his dark, his the popular works, the Iceman and Long Day's Journey. There's this strange, you sense that he must have a sense of optimism somewhere in him, because otherwise the plays really wouldn't work as just people sort of bemoaning themselves.
And how would you even write plays? I mean,
Right.
Why even make something? I mean, it's such a leap of faith to sit down and make something. It's a leap of faith that we've all gathered to tell this story. I'm just seeing a couple of questions in the chat, so I'm going to answer a couple of them and also turn to you two to chime in. I love this question. Apparently, Michael and Antoinette, have you noticed there's copious stage direction in this? And what are we doing about them? And oh my God, these actors, every move is described by O'Neill. Our joke in rehearsal is at one point, you feel like the stage direction is going to be, she cries one tear. And then we'll just decide, a single tear, which eye, right? But how are we handling the stage directions?
I feel like initially, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, both of you.
I will.
You will. I feel like initially, as we've played about in the first days of rehearsal, you kind of throw them out the window, and you really just sort of are focusing on the words, on the lines, and what are you trying to say, and what is your character? What is your character trying to accomplish? But then, you go out, and then all of a sudden you come back because you realize, oh yeah, it says
there's something here
that I should be moving it. Oh, and he wrote that for a reason, and it's on purpose, not an accident. So you try to sort of loosen it up, but then you come back, and at least that's been my experience. When I go back and I look and I go, oh yeah, he answered this for me, and I'm fiddling with my wallet or whatever,
Right. It's interesting though, some of it, right? And Antoinette, I'm thinking of like the door, the pantry door, where you and I realized, and you were so smart, you were like, I think this was a visual gag. So some of the stage directions, and they are so specific, are for a very specific set that we don't have.
Yeah.
It's a very literal, right? And it's a vision of that cottage. It's their summer cottage.
Yeah.
O'Neill's only real home growing up was their summer cottage. They lived in hotel rooms and the kids were in boarding school. And of course, his father and mother were always on the road with the Count of Monte Cristo. But it's like you have to figure out why the stage directions are there, exactly as Michael's saying, and then decide which ones work for what we're trying to do. We are, I think, being as true to the essence of the play as anyone, but we're not literalists. We're treating it as poetry. And that's not to say it's precious, but rather that it's flexible and it's open and it's alive. Go ahead, Antoinette, sorry.
I was just gonna say, you gave, I remember earlier in rehearsal, I said, oh my God, the stage directions, just trying to find the actual words of the characters was so difficult.
Yeah, because some lines are buried inside the stage direction.
And I remember you said, I'm paraphrasing, but you said, it's true, there's so many stage directions, but it's great information. And then, and I've always thought that, I mean, preparing for a play, I usually cross out all the stage directions, but I said, Melia is so smart. And so I was paying attention and I thought, yes, so smart.
Stop. I hate that stuff. All right, go ahead.
But I was looking at this play and I was like, you know what? It's a play from our time is 1906, and I'm thinking, what is he giving me that is actually valuable information? And today, this stage direction of Essie going to Lily in one point, and it's like, wow, that moment of this Essie character going to Lily doesn't work, even though it's
Lily
in the stage direction.
To Essie.
But the opposite, and it's like, that's where the information is a great jumping off point, but then you can let it go.
That's it. If you understand why it's there, you can either use it or not. But you do have to understand why it's there.
You have to understand why it's there. And you have to, we have this epic dining room scene. We have this epic dinner. And that is, his stage directions are actually helpful. And, you cut the stuff you don't need, but it is the perfect blueprint for what we as a company are trying to accomplish. So it is a wonderful jumping off point. But I love the fact that we are flexible, that today's rehearsal reflected that. And I was so appreciative of letting that go.
It's the closest thing to trying to dramatize a novel, because reading his plays are like reading novels. O'Neill, I read during doing my research, I read, and this was something that I never knew as a theater actor, as a drama major, as a lover of the theater and a lover of history. I didn't know that at a certain point, this may sound silly, but that people read plays as just the way we read novels today. That his works came out as plays and they were big bestsellers of the day, and people would go and I don't know how that escaped my theatrical education, but it did. And I just thought, oh, wow. So what an interesting way to sort of look at a way to tell a story to a wide audience, whereas now we think of wide audiences, TV, movies, whatever.
That's right. It was a very different notion, right? It was
more literate era.
A more popular art form maybe than what we've come to. So we hope to return to that. There was a question about music, and you heard those incredibly gifted singers at the beginning of this. I will say that Michael and Antoinette both sing in the production too. They do. They may not have, but they do. Everybody sings at one point. It's not a musical. It's a play with music. Oh, stop.
Michael has a beautiful voice. Leave him alone.
He does. He has a beautiful voice.
He has a beautiful voice.
There is the idea came from, there's one scene, there's one character in the play that keeps singing songs of the period, and then there's one key scene at the heart of the play where songs and text are completely interwoven, and that's where my idea came from, to amplify that and to really create an ensemble that tells this story, that presents this play through the lens of more music. I think in part because it allows you, the audience, to view this as a more theatrical experience, that we're not trying to replicate 1906. We're going to the heart, we hope. It's to the heart of what the play is telling us about how our perspective and our point of view can change our life, right? When my kids, when I first read this play, my children were younger. I have older children now, and I did think I would write like a parenting book of how not to parent based on Long Day's Journey, and use Our Wilderness as the how to be a good parent book, right? There's a whole sort of thing on, because you guys play good parents.
We do, and it's interesting because
But flawed parents. I don't think they're perfect. They're flawed.
No, God forbid.
Yeah.
Well, listen, and this is what the process of rehearsal and excavating all of this meaning in the text comes for me, because the struggle for me is okay, I know as an actor, I have to focus on getting what this character wants and trying to achieve what the playwright intended for this character. Now, does that mean that I play this character the way that I want to, or the way that it's written, so that it, there's a fine
marriage,
line.
Right? It's a marriage of those two ideas.
Exactly. And every performance is different, and every actor's interpretation is different. But I've just, in my other research about O'Neill in general, have been discovering how he writes very specifically particularly about the two of us. With regard to Nat, Nat is innocent. He uses words like innocent, and he fiercely loves his family. All of those things, of course, I can understand and agree with. But then there's also this element of, well, where's the danger? Where's the edge?
Right.
And that's pure actor ego stuff,
But it is there. You also have several times hearing, don't lose your temper. And
right.
Really,
yeah. Well, you did. You brought that up. And so it's just always an interesting thing, trying to make sure I often wonder, I wish O'Neill had lived, obviously he'd be very old now, but to see how his work has been interpreted in so many different ways, and by so many well-known directors and actors. And
it's so interesting for these writers.
Could he ever have imagined? I mean, when you talk about the only other work of his that I'm aware of that contained any African-American characters were the Emperor Jones.
Yeah. And the Harry
and Joe,
they're more expressionistic, right? I mean, they're not in this sort of vein.
And problematic because of the way that he wrote them. I mean, in terms of the actual
and the racial politics of the time, or his views on race, which were true to his time. So this,
and in a touch of the poet, there's reference to a servant, a man of color named Cato, and that's in A Touch of Poet. The character's not physically in the play, but he's referred to often by a character.
We could go on and on, because part of it leads me to think about some of the misogyny that's in this play. That we're working, but it doesn't mean the play is not wonderful. It means we wrestle with it and shift it and find our ways in.
And I don't know
I
would have described it as misogyny then. I don't think
that's right.
I think he was writing as
he's writing of that moment. Yeah, very fair. Antoinette, go ahead, and then I have to move us on.
Yes, I was just saying quickly, I love the fact that the beginning of Long Day's Journey and the beginning of All Wilderness are almost identical in the stage directions.
Exactly.
But I was going to say, his tragedies, please, Melia, keep going.
No, it's perfect. because I promise I keep these seen and heard lives to an hour. I
Okay.
think Zoom fatigue is real, and there's only so much of this
Yeah.
any of us can manage. Although I will say, with the two of you, I feel like we could go on and on. So
Well,
that's
you've already noticed that too. We just gossip. Antoinette and I just sit there and just
oh
gossip.
please,
Ah.
you're two of the smartest, most wonderful actors. But to go to Antoinette's point, the stage directions for both Long Day's Journey and Our Wilderness describe exactly the same room. And it is the room in the now iconic O'Neill cottage. But more importantly, and this is going to lead us into so Antoinette and Michael, Seen and Heard always ends with a poem reading. We always do a poem. And sorry, my allergies are going, so I keep having to blow my nose, so forgive me. But anyway, in Long Day's Journey and in Our Wilderness, the stage directions contain books, and it says exactly what books are on the shelves, and it's the same books, and it is clearly the books that have shaped Eugene O'Neill.
Yeah.
And it's and they're books that within Our Wilderness are discussed and shared. And one of the poems that has a big impact on our young Richard Miller, we're going to hear right now, read by University of Hartford students. Hart students, come join us. Hello, Evan. Hello, hello. We're going to hear now. Thank you for joining us, Evan. And we have also Erica Troutman and Charlie B. Southern. So we'll welcome. Hello. So nice to see you again. It's been a while since I've seen you guys. There's Charlie. We welcome them.
Hi, guys.
Hello. And we are going to Erica unmute, Charlie unmute. Hello, hello. Really lovely to have you here on Seen and Heard. These three wonderful Hart students are going to read for us A Psalm of Life by Henry Wadsworth Longfellow. And the phrase before the poem is what the heart of the young man said to the psalmist. And here it is. So over to you three.
Tell me not, in mournful numbers, life is but an empty dream, for the soul is dead that slumbers, and things are not what they seem.
Life is real, life is earnest, and the grave is not its goal. Dust thou art, to dust returnest, was not spoken of the soul.
Not enjoyment and not sorrow is our destined end or way, but to act that each tomorrow find us farther than today.
Art is long and time is fleeting, and our hearts, though stout and brave, still like muffled drums are beating funeral marches to the grave.
In the world's broad field of battle, in the bivouac of life, be not dumb, driven cattle, be a hero in the strife.
Trust no future, however pleasant. Let the dead past bury its dead. Act in the living present, heart within and God overhead.
Lives of great men all remind us we can make our lives sublime, and departing, leave behind us footprints on the sands of time.
Footprints that perhaps another, sailing over life's solemn main, a forlorn and shipwrecked brother, seeing shall take heart again.
Let us then be up and doing, with a heart for any fate, still achieving, still pursuing, learn to labor and to wait.
Thank you so much. You'll hear excerpts of that poem throughout the play. Clearly, the idealism of Richard Orson Welles in a version of A Wilderness talks about how we all see ourselves in young Richard's idealism and his, what do you call it, Michael? His red meat is poetry.
That's so beautiful. You guys, that was so great.
That was lovely, you three. Thank you so much. As always, historically in this last epoch of Hartford Stage was Seen and Heard, I invite you to join us for a toast So we would love to have you turn on, well, raise your hand or put in the chat if you want to join. I see in the chat, raise your hand and then we can turn on your cameras and include you, and we will toast to this wonderful company, to this reemergence, to this optimistic moment.
Yes,
Damn it, we will be optimistic.
we must.
Damn that Delta. We will not let it, we will not succumb. Welcome all, Cynthia and Stuart Ryder, who is also in our production. Wonderful to see.
There's Stuart.
There's Stuart. Yes, you need a glass. Michael and Antoinette, we didn't give you a glass. You're in my office. Do you have something there?
I brought a glass. But
Oh,
it's empty.
smart
It's
woman.
empty.
Smart woman. Well, it's empty. So this would be the moment if I had hooch in the office, I'd tell you where it was. So, but I don't.
Yes, it does, Michael.
No, I have a bottle.
Well, so if we could all raise our glasses, welcome all back to Hartford Stage. Thank you for bearing with us through this time. Thank you for being here with us. So to reopening, revitalizing, renewing, and realizing how essential it is for all of us to be together. I can't wait to see you all in the theater, to Hartford Stage.
To Hartford Stage.
Here. Yay, thank you all. Oh, David Klein, welcome home. So wonderful.
Oh,
Kate Snodgrass, happy birthday. Just a few little things out there. So thank you all. And we'll see you at the theater.
Oh,
See you
yeah.
at the theater,
October 14th.
Yay!
Cheers. Ciao.
Michael,
Cheers.
Antoinette, wonderful heart students. Thank you all for joining us. Have a good evening, everybody. We'll see you soon at Hartford Stage.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Melia. That was great.
Ta-ta.
Thank you
Have a
all
good
so
evening.
much.
Enjoy your evening.
Thank